This is Chapter 4, Section 3, the Bill of Rights, discussing Amendment, the second half of Amendment 5, which is eminent domain, and then Amendment 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So, Fifth Amendment, we already did in the last section we discussed. It has to do with a lot of the accused person, but there's this last part of the Fifth Amendment that they kind of threw in there that doesn't really make any sense. And it says, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And the name for that is eminent domain. So, what eminent domain is the government cannot take private property from an American without fair payment for that property. The government can seize private property if it deems it necessary for the good of the public. They can't just take it because they want to. There has to be a good reason, such as, a road is very common. Maybe like a school needs to be built on, or some kind of public building that would benefit all. So the government pays the person a fair amount for the property based on similar property values that have been sold in that area in recent time. So this just ensures that the government can't just pay, first of all, low pay you for something for your property, and make sure there's a good reason why they are taking your property. Now, this is not in the United States, because if it was in the United States, this wouldn't happen because of eminent domain. But this is another country where they don't have it, so this individual did not sell their part of the house. It looks like it was a row of houses probably. They didn't sell, so they just built the road around them. This is why it's important. We don't want to do something like that. This is why it's important the government have that power to take over property. So this stuff doesn't happen. Now, right here in Pittsburgh, eminent domain is quite popular. So this was called the Hill District of Pittsburgh. This is where the PBG Arena is probably right around here. But before PBG Arena, it was called the Civic Arena. It was supposed to be like this arena, it opened up for the public, have different shows and everything like that. It was the Penguins hockey stadium for a long time. But what they did was like, we need room for our stadium. It's good for the public. So they took over the Hill District. So you see today, that's where they put it. So through eminent domain, that's what they did. But a lot of Pittsburghers are mad because this was very historically black community with their own paper and everything like that, and they just kind of took it over and destroyed it to put a pretty ugly stadium actually in it. So the Sixth Amendment guarantees criminally accused Americans the right to a speedy trial. The United States court system cannot hold an accused American for long periods of time in jail before their trial. And this is a direct result of what the British would do to the colonists, that they would just have accused person in jail just for years with that. They weren't serving a sentence, they were actually just waiting for the trial, and they were in jail. So they didn't want this to happen, because in the United States you're innocent until you are proven guilty. So you really shouldn't sit in jail, because technically you're innocent until that final verdict that says you're guilty. The average time between arrested and having a trial with your peers is about 3 to 6 months. That might seem like a long time, but it's better than years. And they try. At least there's like constant updates when you're in jail, and when your court dates are. So there's no surprises. Also in the Sixth Amendment, all trials must be fair and open to the public. There's no secret trials. You're always present during your trial. You don't just one day like, this was your sentence. This ensures there's no corruption occurs during the trial process. In the public, it's open to public eyes. You can go down to the courthouse anytime and go sit in on a jury, or sit in on a trial. There's always those seats in the back. We see in movies and TV. Uh, but also, when under the Sixth Amendment, an accused person has the right to a lawyer. And so a lawyer is a person who advises and informs the accused about their legal rights and represents and guides them through the legal process of a trial. If you're not a lawyer, you really don't know all the ins and outs of a trial and all the evidence that you need to bring in. So it's good to have representation. But if you cannot afford a lawyer, then the court will appoint one to you called a public defender. Now, is a public defender going to be as good as your own personal lawyer that you pay? Probably not. They're not going to help you out as much because they're not going to be as good. Because the public defender has many, many other cases to deal with because they're paid by the public. So the public's not going to pay one defender just for one case. So they have a massive caseload. They'll do their best to help you though. Also under the Sixth Amendment is that accused Americans have a right to know what charges are against them and what evidence leads to their arrest. England did not always tell the colonists why they were being arrested. It just wasn't something that, kind of arrest first, charge later. So it was something that wasn't very nice that the British did, and the colonists, now Americans, did not want that to continue. Seventh Amendment. Disagreements between two people or businesses shall be decided by a jury, the federal courts, and not the state courts. The Seventh Amendment relates to civil cases that are about monetary compensation and not criminal charges. So, this just meaning that when you sue someone, it's going to be in the federal courts. When you're suing someone, you want money. So the minimum amount of money to bring someone to a federal court is actually $20. $20 was a decent amount of money in 1790 when the Bill of Rights were written, but now it's not that much money. But they just never changed the amount for the federal courts. So once the federal court jury establishes a decision, that decision was final. If a person is suing a hospital for the medical malpractice, wants $1 million in payment and they want $1 million for the payment for the original treatment. They got a trial. A jury decides should they be awarded money, and then the judge says how much, and that's how it goes. There's no criminal charges being had. This is between two people settling a dispute, but that goes to the federal courts, not the state courts. The Eighth Amendment protects Americans from excessive fines and bail. Excessive fine example is a fine of $1 million for running a stop sign. That's a lot of money for just running a stop sign. So the Eighth Amendment protects the excessiveness of fines. The fine must be appropriately set for the crime committed. So the worse the crime is, the higher the fine will be. And then bail is the amount of money a judge sets for your release, so you don't have to wait in jail before your trial. You can be released out in the public. If bail is not posted, a person will have to wait in jail until their trial, which can take months, which is terrible. So you usually want to post bail. You can there's called bail bondsmen that will loan you bail money in return for, you usually have to pay them 10% or something like that. So the amount of bail set by a judge is based on a person's income and the severity of the crime. So someone that's rich, convicted of a crime, will definitely have a lot higher bail because they want the money to be a high amount. So it's all to ensure that you will show up to your trial. So if it's a rich person and you have a low bail, they're not going to care about losing that money. So you have to make an amount of money large enough that they're going to care, because you get that money back once you show up to your trial. So it's kind of an insurance policy that, like, hey, we're not going to keep you in jail, but we have your bail money. And if you want it back, you need to show up for your trial. And if a person does not show up for their trial, the bail money is not returned to them. Also, a person may be denied bail if the crime committed was very severe, like a mass murder. They're not going to release them out on bail because they might murder again. It's not safe. It's not safe for the public. Or if it did something so bad that, they would definitely not be released on bail. Like Lee Harvey Oswald, who killed President Kennedy, he was not released on bail. They weren't going to let him go. Eighth Amendment also protects against cruel and unusual punishment. Punishments for crime cannot be the cruel variety. Torture, crucifixion, burning at the stake, stoned to death, any kind of whippings, lashings, brandings, any public displays, like this is stocks right here. You can't do that. That's all falls under cruel and unusual punishment. So the problem is that a lot of people feel, or there's a great debate, whether the death penalty is considered cruel and unusual. And there still is a death penalty in most states. It takes a long time. You got to do something really terrible to get the death penalty. Have to kill someone, or most of the time you have to kill multiple people to get the death penalty. And the method is lethal injection, and it's meant to be a painless way, like kind of like falling asleep. Obviously, no one knows how it feels because no one survived it, but that is the point. So the Ninth Amendment protects the rights of the people that are not, is the rights of the people that are not limited to the Bill of Rights. So it's called unenumerated rights. The rights Americans have that are not specifically written in the Constitution. So, example, you have a freedom to travel, the freedom to vote, freedom to marry who you want, freedom to have children, and other basic rights. All because they're not written in the Constitution does not mean that you do not have these rights as an American. So, if we had to list every right that America has, it'd be very, very, very long. So, this is just protecting the American people for other basic freedoms that we have. Like this one, you're not allowed to fly a plane and say, yes, I am. The Constitution says it, even though it doesn't directly say it. So, the 10th Amendment declares the powers not granted to the federal government in the Constitution belong to the state's government. And we kind of already discussed this already. Reserve powers, concurrent powers. The federal government only has the power specifically listed in the Constitution. If it's not specifically written in the Constitution, the power goes to the states. And so the colonists, believe when they were forming this, the early United States, they liked that some of the powers of the states are establishing schools, building roads, local police department. That's all powers under the state because it's not listed in the Constitution. So the state governments have these powers. This concludes all the Bill of Rights amendments in Chapter 4, Section 3.